how do we sustain growth for long periods of time? How can we scale the company to the next level of growth? How do we turn this into a product innovation machine, right? Like how do we leverage what we have today, connect it and make sure that then we advance with what we have? So when we put the list of, okay, what must be true? That was a wake up call. Okay, we need to sustain growth. What do we need to do? And the world is going to continue to change and evolve, and right, AI, there's so many things coming at us. So we quickly realized that people was going to be the magic formula.
I'm Felicia Shakiba, and this is CPO Playbook, where we solve a business challenge in every episode. What happens when a company makes leadership its most powerful lever for growth? That's the bet Inmar Intelligence made. At the center of that transformation is Pia Ostos, Inmar's Chief Performance Officer. She's rewriting the playbook by investing in and modeling leadership development, making it the true engine for sustainable growth. She's proving that culture and leadership behaviors can directly drive growth and even financial outcomes. Pia, so great to have you here today.
Thank you, Felicia, for having me. This is truly an honor. I'm excited for this conversation. There's nothing more that is as exciting as this. And I am a true believer of what you just said of people and how do you really turn that into an engine for growth, right? How do you really see the associates, the employees as the growth for your company in financial outcomes?
Yeah. And what's really exciting about our show is that we have so many different perspectives. We have like the leader, the CEO, we have the investor perspective, and then we have the true strategist like yourself of how you leverage people for these organizational outcomes. And my first question, just to start us off, is when you first stepped into the role, what did you walk into? What was working and what wasn't? Because your role is Chief Performance Officer. So if you could give us a little background on that.
Yes, absolutely. So I stepped into this role exactly a year ago. I would say around this time I was deep into it, my onboarding week. And when I first got here, and I'm sure we'll talk later about how we got here and how I got here and my background, but ultimately we saw there was a disconnect in between how do we support our people, how do we get to our people with our business strategy. We were really a cost center function. My role oversees HR, communications, and marketing, and we were seen as a back-end operations cost center function. And that, if you think about it, if you're not seen as valuable, if you're just seen as a cost, it's not going to fuel your growth. It's not going to fuel your financial outcomes. So that was kind of like the first thing that I understood. If I'm coming in with a new lens, a fresh perspective, a strategist mindset, as you said, how do we look at this differently? How do I create a new framework that is truly unlocking our function as a value center? So that was kind of like the first thing that I realized that we needed to fix that could essentially turn this into something that everyone would care about. And if anything, it would be the growth engine for the company. My focus has really been on creating a framework anchored on 3 pillars. And the first one is really seeing everything with a customer-centric view. How do we use our customer needs? And when we say customer, is not the clients and the people that, and the brands and the retailers and the hospitals that we serve. It is truly who are the customers that we serve. Our people, our employees. We also have external customers like prospective candidates. We have our lenders, we have investors, everyone that is looking at our brand, because I oversee also marketing and communication. So customer-centric view for me was a key component. All of my prior experience, when you start there, when you start with the customer insights and being obsessed with being proactive with those and meeting those expectations and exceeding those expectations, there's a very high probability that you will be successful. So that was the number one pillar. The other thing that I really started to think about, how do we take this function from a cost center to a value center, was that we needed to be very clear on the jobs to be done. So we restructured in some way our team where we had centers of excellence, and each was very clear on what is their roles and responsibilities. How do they connect with the other centers of excellence? And how do they build value together? In the past, we were siloed. We were a siloed function when I came in from the rest of the company. But even within the function, it was siloed, right? HR systems was not working as closely with communications, or communications was not working with talent development, or talent development with total rewards, right? How do you create that cohesive story was a key component to this, and seeing that end-to-end workflow and that end-to-end system. And then the third pillar was making sure that we had a clear vision of what the future looks like as a value center. So it's not just in the moment, let's turn it into a value center, and how do we do it? We needed to really ensure that this was something that we could sustain, and that we had clarity on, okay, what will it take to get there? And this is what we can do in year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that was a key exercise for us to truly believe in what we were doing. So there's more than just quick fixes. We are building to create something that is going to really at the end be the engine for growth, as I said before. And we wanted to rewrite what this function meant. So that's how I approached it. Again, it was bottom line, a cost center, and we wanted to turn it into a value center. And there were many goods about it, and we had the right experts on the team. It was just more about how do you structure it. But it was definitely a good opportunity to reset, right? Leveraging all the goods, all the great people that we had on the team, all the great thinking. How do you then channel it in the right direction so that we can create value?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that having a center of excellence is so critical. And I assume you have what, compensation, talent management, talent acquisition. Is that how you made your COE?
Exactly. So yeah, compensation, we will call it total rewards because it includes benefits as well. But talent acquisition, for sure. We have talent management / talent development. We also have HR systems, HR technology. We have our HR business partners. We have our communications COE. Yeah. So, and then I also introduced a chief of staff role where it was also a key component to bringing all the things together. And that is, to me, one of the key changes that really helped to understand what are the interlocks, and we are one team, and this is how it works. So that has been of tremendous value as well.
Yeah. And for those of you who are listening who don't know what a COE is, they are the core strategy team that then communicates with like HR business partners or sometimes leaders, depending how large or small your organization is, to actually fulfill those strategies tactfully. So that the COE is the strategic portion of the team.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the best way to put it. And ultimately how I also see it with my business mind is that the COEs are pretty much the products that you're going to be releasing in the market.
Right.
And then the HR business partners are the marketers that then have to deploy it to the business units, to the people. And then even within, the products that you're innovating and the centers being the experts at it, you also have your engineers, which are the HR systems and the HR technology team. So it's super interesting because you can really turn it into, strategic function where we are really innovating, thinking about the customer first, and then deploying with other teams.
We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Brent Skinner, host of Small Talk Window here at the Work Defined Podcasting Network. Have you ever wanted a short podcast to listen to during a coffee break of your workday? You've come to the right place. My guests dispense with the small talk as quickly as possible and settle into a meaningful conversation around the world of work.
Back to the show. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, not a lot of people understand that structure, but it's a fantastic structure. I was once part of a COE. And so it's like very dear to my heart because I know how well it works. So, but prior to joining Inmar, the company had gone through a number of acquisitions. However, in the past few years, those have halted. So what was the wake-up call that made the team realize they needed a different approach to company growth?
Yeah, that's a great question. We quickly realized that acquisitions can get you there for a period of time. You will experience growth, but at some point you cannot keep acquiring. So we quickly asked the question, how do we sustain growth for long periods of time? How can we scale the company to the next level of growth? How do we turn this into a product innovation machine, right? Like how do we leverage what we have today, connect it and make sure that then we advance with what we have? So when we kind of like put the list of, okay, what must be true, that was a wake up call. Okay, we need to sustain growth. What do we need to do? And the world is going to continue to change and evolve and right, AI, there's so many things coming at us. So we quickly realized that people was going to be the magic formula and that we needed to invest in our people and in leadership development specifically. So we quickly started to put, okay, what must be true? These are the things that we really will need to get there. And that means we need to equip our leaders with these types of tools and ensure that they have the mindset, the resilience mindset and the adaptive aspect and right resilience to change so that they can grow our company. So we invested in leadership development in a big way, starting with the top leaders, but then we went levels down as well so that we could really transform how people were going about their work, how they were leading. And then of course, right, that driving our culture transformation so that we could continue to grow at a pace that we maybe were not going to go if we were just acquiring, right? So it was certainly a very intentional strategy and something that not many companies would think about. That's how I see it. It's like, okay, you start with other business aspects, not necessarily with the people and leadership. And so far, I mean, we've seen tremendous success with that strategy. And I can say that since we stopped acquisitions, we have grown the company for 14 straight quarters in terms of revenue. And then we have also reduced SG&A as a percentage at the same time where we have grown 14 quarters. So that speaks to where the focus is, right? And how much people can actually do with the same products, same business units, same everything.
Yes. Development. Yes.
So it's at the end, it is really how you really equip those leaders to have the discipline to execute, to lead their teams, to lead with resilience, with this possibility thinking orientation that we believe is going to be the key to success. So that has been our priority and will continue to be.
I couldn't agree with you more, Pia. But what's so interesting about you is that you don't come from a traditional HR path. You've been in banking, brand, and general management. Why did the CEO bet on you to lead performance through people? Now, I know why, but if you could tell our listeners why.
Yes, absolutely. I would say, yeah, this was a surprise for me for sure. When I first got the call, I was like, what? Me? I don't understand. He was very intentional about it. He wanted someone that could connect performance to business outcomes and to put a business lens into these functions so that it could be run as a business versus a back-end function. And that meant that, yes, I was going to need all the experts underneath me that know the ins and outs of all these things that we have for our people, whether it is compensation, right? There's very specific knowledge you need in this area. But he wanted someone that could really change the way we worked, the way we would position the function. And I have experience with transforming brands, transforming categories, launching really brands from scratch to repositioning them. So it was more of a challenge to, okay, how will we look at this function differently and run it as a business? So I quickly kind of like put my business lens and yes, started with the 3 pillars that I talked about before, but then it is, okay, how do we run a business, right? You have weekly business reviews. You have clear targets that are cascading across the organization. You are having intentional one-to-ones all across the function where you're focused on your targets, on how are you going about your targets? What is the behavior that is expected from you? So we started to have that discipline quickly. And we have also been very focused on really, we call it like finding an even better way, but it is all about how do we raise the bar? If we want to be a value center, we need to make sure that we're continuously doing things with an even better way, all on behalf of that customer, our people, specifically the most important customers. So that mindset of possibility of let's test, let's learn, let's apply the learning and it's permeating across my team. And that is something that also I brought with me, regardless of my business lens. I am a weekend person. That's my leadership philosophy. So it was definitely something that I think I needed to bring into that team, so that also there could be belief. And yes, like your work is high impact. Let's actually put it out there and transform our organization. So that has been incredibly helpful. So to run it with a business lens, with all the things that I know. And also it is interesting because the partnerships that I have with our business unit presidents are also very strong, because I can go in the conversation, right? I can really bring a perspective that will support my team, but also understands very well where are they coming from. So then that listening and that negotiation, so to speak, is much easier, because then you really get to understand each other at a much deeper level. So it has been incredible. And so far, I just love what I'm doing. So I never expected to be here. It was not on my career map, and I'm
But
like beyond grateful to be here.
you have these like different perspectives. And I think that like diverse perspectives is really what makes you thrive in this role, because I think in this role, you're not just leading this strategy of people, it's being able to relate to the different functions on how people strategy relates to those specific functions. And in order to do that, you need to speak to the leader in that language.
Exactly right. Yep.
Yeah.
I love
And it sounds like also you brought like experimentation to the table, right? So you said something like, we're going to test, we're going to try, then we're going to retest and apply. You said something of that nature. And that to me is like, you're experimenting and you're bringing this like fail fast mentality of like, how can we fail quickly and in a testing environment so we know which direction to go. That's what it sounds like you did.
Yes, exactly. And I am very used to sometimes with, functions that are used to doing it the same way for many years, right? It's not as very common to see a lot of innovation coming from HR, marketing, and communications. But my prior experience in all of my roles throughout my career, it was all about that, right? Test, fail quickly, bring something else to the table, and learn from that experience, and until you really hit it right. So there's really here a very safe environment to just now think about it in a different way, challenge the assumptions. If we did it like this, well, let me ask you this question, right? So I always ask questions. That's also how I try to lead, because now I'm starting to learn a lot. So I can say I can definitely be an expert in some of these areas, but not expert. I would never call myself an expert. You know what I mean? I think I can now play. But at first it was like, I'm just going to ask really good questions and get them thinking differently, right? So my way of going in was, yes, putting discipline and putting some sort of like this mindset, but also how do I ask the best questions I can ask so that we can think differently and push us to the next level.
Yeah. And you built, was it 6 core standards to anchor culture? So which one changed behavior fastest? And can you give a moment like when it really clicked?
Yes. So the 6 standards that we introduced, and that was more at the company level. And that was one of the areas that we focused on as part of that leadership development investment that I mentioned before. It was all anchored on those 6 things. And those 6 things are the things that we believe must be true as well for these leaders to actually do, right? It's how they show up, how they behave, how they act with others, how they act with their teams. And when we established them, we quickly realized that every initiative that we have done, even in the past 3 years, you can just run it through that filter of those 6 things that are critical behaviors and expectations of leaders. And those that succeeded, you would rate them really high on each of the 6. And then those that didn't, you would rate them really low on each of the 6. So that has been interesting to see, because it's not just now, but you can do the look back and almost run it again through that filter. So it was super interesting. And as I think about the 6, I would say the one that quickly was, I mean, from an associate's perspective and from the employee perspective, that they felt connected to was learning in action, which yes, everyone is out. Sometimes people, I mean, a lot of people love to learn, right? Being a learner is not that difficult. It is about how you take action after you learn, right? It's about applying the learning. And I think that really resonated with people because then that fuels innovation, that fuels improvement. And then you start feeling motivated about what you're putting on the table. So it's always also helping people feel safer in terms of, okay, let's learn and apply the learning for the next time that we do this exact process, right? So it is okay if we had some missteps, but let's learn and apply the learning, right? So now we're always doing this culture of a debrief where we are trying to learn from everything that we do, whether it's a large initiative, a meeting. I can debrief with my team after this podcast. What went well? What can I do better next time? Right. So you are that learning in action.
You're doing great, Pia.
Thank you. But it's that mindset. And I think our culture and the organization embrace that very quickly. And that is something that I think is definitely taking us to that next level from a performance perspective.
Is it this concept of like learning on the fly, or what would you say is the value that you're describing?
Yeah, so I would say it's not as much learning on the fly, although that could happen. I mean, you could be in a meeting just listening and you're connecting the dots and you're like, wow, I really like that. I'm going to use it and apply it in my business, right? So that could be one example. But I think how we try to ensure people are looking at this is more so as a tool to always have a look back of in a positive way. It's about mostly the next time. What did we learn that we can use versus just going about your process and closing it? How do you actually stop, bring all the stakeholders together, do a debrief, and we call them positive debriefs because it's not, even if something went wrong, it's about next time. It is about how can we do it even better, but let's learn. Because if we are right and there's no blaming, there's no function that had a fault, it's all coming together. What worked well? What can we do better? What can we do differently next time? And let's actually commit to an action plan so that when we do this process again in 3 months, we will take it to the next level, right? And that leads not only to improvement, constant improvement, and that's how you keep growing. But in some areas, these debriefs have allowed us to actually also innovate and raise the bar, right? That's other of our standards. Sometimes in those learning opportunities, you challenge the process and you're like, why are we even doing this? Let's do something different, right? And we just need those moments of really at the end reflection and understanding so that you can continue to elevate the standard in everything that we're doing, even if it's simple or something big.
Okay, so it's the debrief. It's
Yes.
having space to reflect and then improve, right? Okay, so the next step, now that we understand, like this is the fastest moving, this is what moves the business the fastest, this value, this standard. How do you translate those standards into observable, measurable standards that leaders could actually be graded on, or the criteria, of their performance review?
Yes, I really like that question because I think that's critical. They are not just on paper. Otherwise, how do you embed them in the culture, in the day-to-day, in the way they lead and in the way they go about their work?
Exactly.
That's the expectation. So the first step that we took was define them in a way where it was action oriented. So you know, right? This is what I would see from you. You are challenging assumptions so that you can find a new path forward. So first we define them as actions, not just kind of like titles. And then from there, we went into describing what that means by level. So individual contributor, management layer, executive management. And what does it mean to actually show up doing learning in action for your level? And then we have very specific behaviors and things that you can observe and also rate. So that is, I think probably I'll go deeper into that later, but that is the first step for them to have awareness of, okay, what does this mean for me at my level so that I can actually do it and my manager, my peers can see it. So that was the first step. And then we started actually thinking about how do we rate ourselves against this? So it's not that you do it well or not, it's how often do you do it? So if we think about the example of the debrief, if you just do it once, excellent. And maybe you did it with like the best execution ever. But if it's just done once, yeah, you're not going to drive that growth that we need. You need to be doing that consistently. So we measure it with a consistency rating. How consistent are you in this with your team and with your peers? So it's not just also about me, it's about about others and how you work with others. And then the third element was that we now have incorporated the standards as part of our performance evaluations. So then the associates and the employees actually care about this. It's not just, oh, that is what's the best in class. No. I'm going to be measuring you and your bonus and your merit, right? Everything is going to be anchored in these behaviors and of course your targets, your business performance. But that was a big initiative that we launched this year. And I do believe that when there's incentives behind these things that are a little bit more subjective, people actually do it. And I mean, we've been doing it now for at least 18 months in terms of like knowing what those standards are, but it is really resonating with people and it is how we go about things. And as I said, you can actually define success. If you did the 6 things, it will show up, right? When you use it as a filter, it's pretty telling. I think you asked for an example, and we recently were at one of our warehouses and we were just thinking, wow, we were in a really tough situation with one of the government agencies like 18 months ago. When you look back, if we didn't have this playbook, so to speak, and if we hadn't done the 6 things that really, as we know, we believe they drive to that long-term success, we would be in that same hole right now. So we actually went one by one and really mapped out, okay, these were the steps taken and why. And that was a huge accomplishment that we had with the government. We truly believe that it was anchored on those 6 things, right? So you can check on every line. And that's something that we really think is going to drive our transformation and growth. So now it's part of your evaluations. That's what employees want to hear. And then there's no question.
We'll be right back. Back to the show. And you rolled out initiatives like pay for performance bonuses and leadership training and manager certification. Like these are really big initiatives. So which lever do you think moved the results the fastest?
Yeah. Oh, I cannot speak for pay for performance yet because we just rolled it out.
Okay.
So we haven't gone through it yet, but that is one that we believe is going to play a big role, because if you do these behaviors well, if you do your business targets well, the more you will get paid, right? So the better you do, the more you get paid. And I think that drives a lot of motivation in people. On the others, I would say that manager certifications and the leadership development, by far the leadership development. And that was the foundation, right? As we think about our culture transformation, it started by training our leaders. And we quickly realized that when leaders are embracing these mindset, these behaviors, they start doing it consistently and they are modeling and people see what you do. So you have to start at the top. And I find that rarely companies start at the top. They kind of like focus on the middle ground. And when there's no alignment with senior leaders, then it's never going to connect. You will have some progress, but then it's going to get stalled. So here it's almost like, okay, we need to start this as this is who we are. This is how we work, and we are modeling. We really are here to push it down, and that way there's no question that this is our culture and this is how we want to go about it. That I think it has been the one that has been a game changer and the one that we made the most investments on. We recently got a survey, that our cultural survey, basically to measure our growth in terms of mindset, in terms of NPS, in terms of engagement. And it was an 18-month journey since we started the leadership investments. And now till today, we just got the results and we grew NPS. It was already at the benchmark of like really high. And now we grew by 15 points. So we are now like above the industry, something unheard of. And we also grew engagement by 6 points, and we grew our mindset score, that really the culture index, which measures like these things and how people are really approaching their work. And we grew that by 100 points. It was just really fascinating to see it, because you realize that leadership really drives that NPS, that engagement. And if done well, that's going to drive business results, right? It's showing up in our financials. So it was a great proof point to really say, okay, yeah, we definitely grew here. And we can say this is certainly supporting these other growth that we see just in our numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the proof in the pudding, right? That's the proof of like all the hard work that you've been doing is if you're not measuring how the needle is moving, then you don't know if your programs are working or not. And so many organizations do this. It's mind blowing. It's like you put all this work and time, especially because you're bringing time from leaders and your executive team, your functional leaders, from other employees, and without having some sort of assessment to understand how your programs are working or the impact or the level of impact, right, that you're making, it's really just challenging to see how to improve. And like you said, to debrief and then figure out what to improve next. So it's just a full circle. So Pia, this is fantastic. Everything that you've shared, is there any other one piece of advice for any executives or leaders about how to make a high performing culture, if you will?
Yeah, I would say my advice is focus on culture that actually really is grounded on beliefs that they are aligned at the very top, that people actually want to embrace and model, instead of just the typical work of let's create our values and put them on the walls, right? It really is beyond that. Really understand what is it that we need to continue to scale from a people perspective, and then get that aligned and really focus on how do I embed this across everything. So it's like a 360 campaign, so to speak. It's not just the belief and alignment at the top, but we need training on that. We need it as part of our evaluations. We need it as part of our communications. So every time you're going to be doing, the CEO update and the town halls, like they are embedded everywhere, right? It's how we go about everything that we do. So that is something that I think can really benefit. So deep belief that starts there, alignment at the top and modeling, and then make sure that you really embed them in all of your systems, and specifically people systems, so that they are really part of your culture. Romance. So,
and people are held accountable for those.
Yes.
Yeah. Pia, thank you so much for being here today.
No, thank you so much, Felicia, for having me. I enjoyed it. And as I said, I am very passionate about what I do, and the impact on people is really what gets me going. So if I can unlock people to be their best selves, and then that will unlock the company's performance, I mean, there's nothing more motivating.
Visit us at cpoplaybook.com. Your support as a subscriber means the world to us. So thank you for tuning in. I'm Felicia Shakiba. Let's connect on LinkedIn.